In the nearly 4 years of brutal warfare in Ukraine, we've had a front-row seat to Russia's slow descent into chaos, both militarily and economically. Russia's troops are dying in record numbers. Equipment is being systematically destroyed. And the perceived cost of the war that was expected to last for a few weeks has spiraled out of control. And beneath the headlines about territorial gains and casualty counts lies a far darker story that reveals just how catastrophically Russia's military is collapsing from within. Russian soldiers aren't just dying at the hands of Ukrainian forces. They're being executed by their own commanders. Some soldiers fight back, killing officers who order them on suicide missions. But that's just part of the course for a military system that has completely lost its bearings and can collapse from within. Let's examine exactly what's happening inside Russia's crumbling military machine and why it could reshape the entire trajectory of this war. Starting with the exact scale of Russia's executions. Now, reports of Russia killing its own soldiers aren't just speculation or Ukrainian propaganda. It's derived from documented evidence gathered by Russian independent media, intercepted communications, and testimonies from Russian soldiers themselves. According to a comprehensive investigation by the independent Russian outlet Vesta, Russian commanders across multiple units are carrying out summary executions of their own soldiers. This practice has been dubbed obny, or zeroing out, referring to the act of removing the soldier from both military records and from existence itself. This investigation has so far identified 101 Russian servicemen accused of involvement in these field executions, with 79 of them confirmed through at least 2 independent sources. These are also unlikely to be isolated incidents. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, the main military prosecutor's office has received more than 12,000 complaints related to killings within the ranks. That's not 12,000 complaints total, but complaints specifically about Russian soldiers killing other Russian soldiers. A source within Russia's main military prosecutor's office reveals something even more damning. The agency has imposed an informal ban on investigations into officers fighting in Ukraine, claiming such inquiries could supposedly negatively affect military operations. In other words, Russian commanders have been given carte blanche to execute their own troops with impunity, so long as that doesn't actually impact the bottom line of severely damaging their offensive or defensive positions. If you're unsure whether 12,000 is a small number, know that Russia's total deployment in Ukraine is estimated to be around 700,000, excluding the estimated 1 million casualties. That's roughly 1.7% of the total current number of deployed troops in Ukraine. Alternatively, consider it on a per-day basis, which means roughly 8.9 complaints per day since the war has lasted for 1,345 days at the time of posting this video. That's 8 or 9 instances of a Russian soldier being executed by his own comrades for failing to abide by orders that were likely suicidal in the first place. And the way Russian commanders zero out their troops varies significantly, which reveals the extent of damage inflicted on the military's morale. The first is perhaps the most straightforward, direct execution. This typically happens to Russian soldiers who refuse to participate in what they call meter assaults or human waves, suicidal attacks without adequate support from mechanized infantry, artillery fire, or aerial reconnaissance. Many of these soldiers are simply shot point-blank range in whatever trench the Russian unit is currently sitting in. Medusa's report on zeroing out included a mention of a mobilized soldier named Alexei who described how in the 7th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, those who refused to take part in pointless assaults were executed with automatic rifles. Then their bodies either dumped in the nearby river or buried close to the trench itself. In June 2025, a soldier with a call sign fixer refused to act as a beacon, essentially live bait sent forward without armor or weapons to draw Ukrainian fire and reveal enemy positions. He was beaten on video, tortured with an electric shock device, and then shot dead on his commander's orders. Executions can happen during a mission itself, with commanding officers employing snipers to catch soldiers who are attempting to run from the front line or desert from a unit. By Alexis's count, 2 snipers have killed 20 people in his unit in 2023 and 40 in 2024. Presumably, those same snipers have either continued the streak of executing deserters, which would create dozens more dead, or even more grimly, the snipers themselves might have been removed from service for refusing to execute any more troops on their commander's orders. And given that Russian drone operations have reached a level of competence equal to Ukraine's units, drone operators have also been given the unfortunate opportunity to become part of the zeroing out cycle. Reports from the 139th Separate Assault Battalion suggested that commanders would hold drone operators at gunpoint while directing them to keep deployed troops in sight. Then drone operators would simply deploy the FPV kamikaze drone's explosive onto the soldiers if they ever turned around and ran away from combat. If soldiers aren't executed instantly, they might await what is possibly a worse fate, torture. Some soldiers were reported to have been held in pits or cellars, denied food and water, and beaten multiple times daily. Many die from torture or starvation, while others are forced to fight each other to the death to earn their release. Video footage from May 2025 shows 2 soldiers from the 114th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade in a pit, forced to fight. A voice off camera says, Commander Camera basically said, whoever __ up the other one gets out of the hole. The 2 men fight with their bare hands, and one stops moving after being put in a chokehold for a minute. We don't see the ultimate fate of the men, and some have suggested that the soldiers are prisoners of war. Medusa's research claims that KA is the call sign of an actual commander of the 114th Separate Guards Brigade, who has also been accused of extorting money from his troops, which we'll touch on a bit later. And if commanders don't do the killings themselves or direct their troops to execute soldiers, they can always fall back on the tried and tested tactic of sending soldiers on suicide missions. In some cases, these men end up being deployed without body armor, weapons, or even equipment at all. They can't fall back from the mission because the commanders also deploy barrier troops, which are soldiers whose only job is to hold back the line and prevent retreat. Barrier troops then simply force the soldier back or even possibly execute them on the spot if they approach. In one news report from just 10 days ago, Ukraine's drone operators discovered that some barrier troops were also using drones to drop explosives on fleeing soldiers. Using barrier troops in this way could be considered illegal under humanitarian law and could constitute a war crime. These new barrier troops are a perversion of the original system instituted by Stalin, where the barrier troops would be used to round up surviving troops in penal battalions, who were then routinely deployed to the most dangerous or hopeless offensive missions with minimal chances for survival. Even then,